All right, everybody. Let's just take a moment and show up where you are. This present moment, if you can let go into it, is the great cleanser. Because to step into it, you have to let go of everything else. And you have to do it 100%. 99% won't get you there. That extra 1% throws the gates wide open so that all the support you need can return. So start by letting your senses take in the room around you. Notice how your attention lifts high in your body around the forehead and crown. Notice that there's something to pay attention to outside the stories of your head. And just let yourself gently release into a reach into this moment. That reach doesn't come from pushing, it comes from releasing from the core of your being. It's not willpower, it's a willingness. And when you can give yourself to that 100%, all the gates open. Most of you who've been coming here a while have had experiences with that. Momentary, but legitimate. Can you let go into it completely now? Watch this moment. Hear this moment. Feel this moment. If your head is tangled up in your stories, you can't enter the moment. You'll try. You'll sit down to meditate, but there'll be a story that's just pulling against you the whole time, running in the background, sucking the energy towards it. One of the things that I've learned, actually by becoming an expert in study design, is that we cannot trust the conclusions we draw from our observations. There are things we do in study design to make things more trustworthy. We can randomly assign people to an intervention versus a control, and then we know the only thing deciding what group they ended up in was random, and that clears up a lot of the noise. But when it comes to human perception, it's purely observational. What that means is our brain is constantly trying to draw cause and effect relationships between things that have many, many different causes themselves. In my field, which is clinical nutrition, people for a long time were touting feeding more to critically ill patients. And they were doing that based off of observational studies, not different than just the way you draw conclusions when you walk around. And what they didn't realize was that this relationship they kept seeing, this positive relationship between feeding more and better clinical outcomes, was confounded by the fact that people who were less critically ill were easier to feed. Illness severity had a relationship with how much you feed, and it had a relationship with the outcome. So that when you looked at any statistic showing the association between how much you feed and outcome, blended in to that statistic was the relationship between illness severity and outcome. And so there really wasn't a good way to know the true relationship from an observational study. But that's just one confounding influence. Every possible reason you could have to feed or not feed somebody in a hospital has the same confounding influence. It makes it so that you cannot tell what the true relationship is, but you think you can. You think you're looking at the relationship, the cause and effect relationship between two things, and what you're really seeing is all the different things that one variable is a proxy for. All the different things that move the levels of that one variable. And your life is the same way. You might see what appears to be a relationship over and over and over again But you fail to recognize all of the third variables that are impacting both the cause that you think you have found and the outcome. What that means is, when it comes to the story of life, lack of clarity is built in to the human experience. You're never actually seeing it the way it is. You might be able to catch one or two things that are influencing it and account for that in your head. But you've never caught all of them. So what does that mean for your life? If a clear view is relatively hopeless, unless you're going to walk around running statistics and adjusting for things all day. But even then, you don't always have a way to measure the variables that are causing the problem. If you know that you've never really got a handle on the cause and effects of things, then what does that mean for your life? What can you aspire to within the realm of the story? There are many answers to that question that would all have some degree of correctness. The one I'm going to give you right now is awareness. There's tremendous freedom in I don't know. I don't know, but I'm going to stay open. I don't know, let's let it all breathe and see how things shake out. I'll bob and weave the way I need to in the moment. There's a freedom to I don't know. It's even alluded to a little bit in the Christian Bible, right? Where knowledge becomes the enemy, the serpent in the garden. Thinking you know is ignorance. And I don't mean that in a disempowering way. This is strangely empowering when you can really see it. What it means is the answer is not in the story. And that the power of interpretation of the story starts and stops with you. When you know that none of your interpretations are accurate, then everything stops becoming about what's correct and becomes more about what's useful. If you have an interpretation that is causing you to suffer, and you know that it's not actually correct, that empowers you to let it go. It empowers you to open up and say, show me a different way to look at this. I used to reach out to divine consciousness and just ask, show me what this looks like through your eyes. And if you're really open, if you're really 100% open and available to be rearranged, you'll see a much bigger picture. It still won't be the whole picture. Our awareness isn't capable of that degree of dimensionality, literally. This is why the teachings to the masses that are often handed, the less mystical, the more exoteric versus esoteric teachings, are always about understanding, prajna, or just doing unto others as you would have done unto you. Just simple bumper sticker teachings, but they're teachings that if you follow them, they lead you to something that actually works. They lead you to an understanding that is useful. You may never know the reason that somebody hurts you, but there is a reason. Whatever you have in your head is an assumption you made up. So why not make up an assumption that makes forgiveness easier? Why not make up an assumption that's empowering to moving forward and letting go? If you know none of it's correct anyways. This isn't a teaching I ever hear anyone talk about, but it's just there to be seen. There are probably easier roads into it than biostatistics. Maybe not. I just spend my day buried up to my neck in poorly designed studies. These are the things I look at. But they're not separate from your spiritual life. Spiritual life is awakening. I don't think you can awaken to what's actually happening. But I do think you can awaken to your place within the folly. I think you can become aware of where the boundaries of your knowledge are. And I think that's usually the beginning of real spiritual growth. Does that make sense? Does that translate? It's not something you're ever going to read in a book. Not really. Most people will never watch this video. And they'll be 100% invested in things that aren't real. Good, thank you. I think I'd like us to go into meditation, and I'd like that to just marinate for a little while. Don't try and play with it, just let it sit in the space with you. And just kind of breathe it in. Okay? Attention at the forehead and crown. Give your attention to this moment, what you see, what you hear, what you feel. And if something from your day won't let go, understand that you don't understand. That your interpretations of it are not accurate. There may be something you need to do about it, but the meaning you've assigned to it is not based in anything except your own personal cycles. What if none of this is the way it looks to me? And if it's not the way it looks, how is it maybe fine exactly the way it is? How is this maybe okay? How is this maybe a good thing? Notice what those questions do to the feeling state of your body. Your subconscious is working on better questions now. Instead of, why does this always happen to me? Today there was a very negative feeling in my space. The brain instantly starts to interpret it. Why do I feel this way? And what it does is it latches on to things that have happened that could be perceived to be negative. Today, an internship that I was hoping to get started looking like it's not going to come through. I had to quickly pivot and apply to a different place, and now I'm waiting to see if that's going to come through. The funny thing is, I don't really care. I don't really care. I'd let go of the whole thing if I could. I'm always on the fence about it. But it was the most obvious thing. And so my brain latched onto it and started telling that story. Oh, this is so stressful because I'm not getting this thing that I think I need. And what if I don't get it in this time window, and then I don't get to finish this degree I'm working on? And really, it was me just trying to make sense of why I'd be so upset about something. The funny thing is, when you let go of the story, the feeling is still there. Which means the feeling had nothing to do with the story. For me, it could be somebody in my world is going through something. But when I say something, I mean I've got people that, they chip a nail and it's the biggest deal ever. Or, more likely, a shift in the weather can do this too. When you release the interpretation off the feeling, all that's left are chemicals moving through your body. It takes its sticking power away. It doesn't take away the potency if it's coming from outside of you. Though you can do things to buffer against it. You can act upon it. And I did. Or if you know who it is, you can call them and just work it out. But when you instead filter it through your stories, filter it through things that happen to you in the day erroneously, it becomes yours. Suddenly it's yours. It's part of your life story, your cause and effects. And again, completely inaccurate. And not useful. And maybe you'll never know what's making that feeling happen. But knowing that you don't know, and knowing that it isn't attached to your thoughts, allows you to let go in a different way. It means when whatever's causing it stops, the feeling will go away. When the sky clears, when someone shifts their attention off of you. But if you've made it yours, then it's always there to get triggered. It's such a messy little world we're in. It's no wonder everybody gets lost in this jungle of stories. Can you see how thick it is? We do it all day long. You can get to a point where you catch yourself, but I'm not sure you can get to a point where it stops happening. I've never known a teacher that I didn't actively watch them fall into delusion. And I've known some pretty powerful people. Power and delusion's a messy combination. Knowing that you don't know is priceless. To not know and still show up. To sit in front of somebody who's suffering and understand that they don't understand. To sit in front of somebody who is angry and damaging and understand at a deep, visceral level that they don't know, that their conclusions never had a chance in hell of being accurate. And because you've worked with it so much, you know how much it would take to get them from where they are to a place of recognizing that they don't know. It's powerful. It's useful. Let's go back into the silence and just let that sink in a little more. What if I don't understand them at all? What if I never did? What if I have no idea how they feel? Or why they did that? How does it maybe make sense that that happened? What doors does it open that are good? Can you see how that just takes the lid off the jar? You always want to keep the lid off the jar. I used to live monastically, and we would see people come in all the time. You know, people would come and go from the monastery. And one of the things I always used to notice was how much they wanted their spiritual realizations to be tied up in a nice little bow. Just put in a jar with the lid on it so that it's done. I got it. The thing is, anything worth knowing expands forever. Anything true is flooded with consciousness and light and further realization. This desire to think you've got it figured out is a desire to stop growing. It's a desire to be done with the incessant invitation to grow. An understandable request, but unfortunately, not a useful one. How have I maybe only barely begun to experience this? What's my next step within this teaching? Do you see? Lid off the jar. There's no such thing as a realization from your past. Realizations are eternal. They're always growing. They're living beings. They continue in you now. So you can't tie them up, you can't trap them down, you can't whittle them down into final conclusions. You can let them direct your behavior. You can really let them help you ask better questions of your mind. But they have their own road to walk with you. You get to walk alongside them, actually. This week, I want you to watch for those triggers that take you into stories about your strong opinions and knowledge about other people or certain circumstances. And I want you to use this to disassemble them. You're going to just ask yourself the simple question, what if I've never actually understood this the way it really is? What if I've always been off base about this? What if I have no idea what made this happen? You get the picture. Something that just opens you out of your certainty, because you're misusing your certainty. You're using it in ways that aren't useful. And then sit for a moment in the vacuum that that creates. And then ask better questions. What's the good in this? How is this maybe okay the way it is? In what ways is it maybe a good thing? What purpose does this actually serve? Even the worst things stimulate good things all around them. One person's suffering teaches service and generosity in the people around them. one president's selfishness impacts elections in the opposite direction all over the world. But you don't see it if you don't ask the right questions. You don't feel it if you don't ask the right questions. And if life is just a faulty interpretation, it might as well be an interpretation that is useful to your feeling body. A feeling you'll then have to offer the other people lost in this maze. Any questions before we end for the night? All right, guys. I'll be here next Thursday. Have a good week. Thank you. Good to see you. Night, everyone. Thank you.